promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. African leaders pitch investment at 9th Tokyo Conference for Continental Growth.
Africa is the next frontier for investment. Most parts of the world are saturated when it comes to investment. Africa is opening up, is growing, and is a place that Japan should be looking at.
Mali's Supreme Court indicted former Prime Minister Shogo Maiga over alleged damage of public property.
What he has sowed is what he has reaped, because he helped people violate a lot of things. Today, silencing Shogel is more advantageous than keeping him. He was incarcerated just to keep him quiet.
IMF begins week-long technical assessment in Senegal amid growing calls for a citizen-led audit of public debt, and Nigeria faces deepening humanitarian crisis as millions grapple with displacement, hunger, and rising poverty. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. Newslink begins with some trade and investment matters as African leaders are currently pitching the continent investment opportunities at the 9th Tokyo International Conference for Sustainable Continental Development in Japan. Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, President Mahama of Ghana, President Tinubu of Nigeria, and Liberia's Joseph Boakai are among the continent leaders participating in the conference. In a statement, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama extended a strong invitation to Japanese investors into the continent to take advantage of the continent's African Continental Free Trade Area, while highlighting Ghana's 24-hour economy as a game changer for all-round businesses, trade and political stability. Mr. Mahama stressed that Africa remains the next major hub for global business and rich with natural and human resources. Here is Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama.
Ghana is also the host country for the African Continental Free Trade Area. You all have heard the landmark protocol that was signed by African countries. So far, almost 50 African countries have signed that allow us to export duty-free, tariff-free into each other's markets. Increasing numbers of products are being registered, and once you register your product and it meets all the standards, you can export duty-free and tariff-free into each other's markets. And as you were told, the sub-regional market, which is West Africa, is 400 million people. Ghana is 33 million people, and the continental market is 1.4 billion people. And so with the vehicle of the African Continental Free Trade Area, you potentially can export into 1.4 billion market. Ghana is a land of opportunity, and many nationals from all over the world are investing in Ghana. We wish to, because of the discipline, quality standards, and industrial wisdom that Japanese businessmen have, we wish to encourage Japanese businessmen to look towards Ghana. Africa is the next frontier for investment. Most parts of the world are saturated when it comes to investment. Africa is opening up, is growing, and is a place that Japan should be looking at.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama. Let's head to the Central Sahel region, particularly in Mali, where citizens are reacting to the arrest of former Prime Minister Shogo Maiga. He was taken into custody on Tuesday by the country's Supreme Court following charges of damaging public property. The court charges stems from a report by the Office of the Auditor General which raises concerns over his management during his time in office as a Prime Minister. Imo Edit completes the story.
After a week in police custody at the National Economic and Financial Center, Senegal Maiga was finally placed in custody on Tuesday. In the streets of Bamako, the news immediately became a topic of discussion. The citizens we met welcomed the decision, as they believe the former Prime Minister is the cause of the country's current situation.
What he has sowed is what he has reaped, because he helped people violate a lot of things. Because we saw here with the politicians, it's his family, right? He abandoned his family. So if you have abandoned your family, that's what you will reap. That's all. For me, it's very good. He is the one who orchestrated all of this.
The former head of the transitional government is being prosecuted for alleged act of damage to public property while he was prime minister. However, for these other citizens, the arrest has no other objective than to silence Senegal Maiga, whose position disturbs his former allies.
Today, silencing Senegal is more advantageous than keeping him. You say he has destroyed. He has sanctions that do not even allow him to travel today. It's a way to silence him, but it is to misunderstand the man. It will further radicalize him. It will push him even more to the limit so that he continues the struggle he has always led. He was incarcerated just to keep him quiet. People try to say that Senegal also has files on the transition, because if the transition is here today, it's thanks to Senegal. It's Senegal who brought the transition here today. So we can say that he also has compromising files on the transition.
Meanwhile, no date has been set for Senegal Maiga's trial.
A report by our Bamako correspondent and voiced by Imo Edet. Back here in Senegal, a collective of citizens' organizations is calling for the establishment of a citizen-led audit of the country's public debt covering the period from 2012 to 2024. This appeal comes as a delegation from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, is currently in Senegal from August 19 to 25, 2025 as part of ongoing discussions with Senegalese authorities. This IMF mission is rather a technical monitoring and consultation framework of Senegal's public debt, which is reaching nearly 100% of its GDP. Augustin Colley completes the story.
The organization brings together citizen groups, academics, artists, and parliamentarians. In a written communication, the collective is demanding a citizen's audit of all of Senegal's debt, including the country's external debt, both public and private, from 2012 to 2024. Its objective is to shed full light on the management of public finances, identify illegitimate debts, and ensure that the Senegalese people are not held accountable for debts incurred in violation of legal procedures and democratic principles. According to a report about the Court of Auditors, Senegal is facing a public debt crisis described as opaque and unsustainable, with debt levels approaching 100% of the country's GDP. Currently, an IMF mission is in Senegal to assess the situation, support ongoing economic and budgetary reforms, and help prepare the next steps in collaboration. This is not a formal negotiation mission, but rather a technical monitoring and consultation framework. For nearly a week, the mission will focus on issues such as the execution of the 2025 budget, the preparation of the 2026 Initial Finance Law, and upcoming structural reforms. An official statement is expected at the end of the visit to present the mission's findings and future outlook. As a reminder, Senegal's Court of Auditors' latest report covering the period 2019 to 2024 reveals significant budgetary irregularities, particularly during the final term of former President Macky Sall. These findings have raised serious concerns about financial mismanagement and prompted widespread calls for greater scrutiny and accountability.
Augustin Colley filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let me take you to Nigeria, where a deepening humanitarian crisis is emerging as millions of citizens face displacement, hunger, and worsening poverty. The government warns that dwindling international aid is compounding the impacts of flooding, insecurity, and natural disasters. WADR's Usman Umar reports from Abuja.
According to the United Nations figures, Nigeria's humanitarian outlook is grim, as more than 3 million people remain internally displaced, while over 24 million citizens have experienced hunger. Minister of State for Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Tanko Sununu says the combined weight of natural disasters, insecurity and shrinking donor support is pushing millions further into poverty and malnutrition.
Now, if we look at the impact and the consequences of flooding in the country, it really calls for a concern. It has debased most of our farmland, displaced a lot of Nigerians. As of today, the count of internally displaced persons is almost over 3 million Nigerians.
The warning came at the inauguration of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on Flood Management and Response. Committee Chairman Maidala Balami said flooding is no longer a seasonal inconvenience but a national emergency demanding coordinated action across government and society.
Each year, lives are lost, properties destroyed, livelihood disrupted, and the socioeconomic fabrics of the entire communities severely affected. This is no longer a seasonal inconvenience, it is a national emergency that demands urgent, coordinated, multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary strategic action.
Speaker of the House of Representatives Dr. Tajuddin Abbas, represented by Majority Leader Professor Julius Ihombere, urged the committee to provide both immediate relief measures and long-term solutions. He emphasized the need to close legislative gaps that weaken Nigeria's flood management systems. As Nigeria faces another rainy season and hundreds of lives have already been lost to flooding, the warnings underscore the urgency for a stronger national framework to confront recurring disasters and a humanitarian crisis that shows no sign of easing. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
From Nigeria, let me take you to Ghana to some electoral matters where the country's Electoral Commission has announced key timelines for 2 upcoming parliamentary by-elections aimed at filling vacant seats in parliament. The by-elections will be held in the Tamale Central constituency in the northern region and Akwitia in the eastern region. Both seats became vacant following the passing of the sitting members of parliament. Nadi Ditete reports.
The Electoral Commission has announced September 30, 2025 as a date for the Tamale Central by-election. The poll follow the death of the MP for the constituency, Dr. Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, one of the 8 people who lost their lives in the August 6 helicopter crash. According to the EC, nominations will be received from September 8 to 10 at its Tamale Metropolitan Office, with forms available for download from the Commission's website. In a related development, the EC has confirmed that the printing of ballot papers for the Akwitia by-election will begin Wednesday, August 20. That election was triggered by the death of Ernest Yaukumi, the constituency's MP, in July this year. After a meeting between the Inspector General of Police and political parties, Director of Electoral Services, Benjamin Banobio, assured the media of the Commission's preparedness.
Indicated that we are ready. As at now, we are going to start printing of ballots. Recruitment has already been done. We have procured all the materials required for the elections. And so we are ready. Political parties also raise issues concerning security, and the police, led by the IGP, has assured us that there will be effective security to ensure that voters go about their normal duties on the D-Day in a very peaceful manner. And therefore, the people should have trust in the system. And nobody is going to intimidate anybody. What happened in Abrikuma North was raised, but the police assured us that that is a thing of the past, and that they are on the ground. They are going to ensure that nobody takes the law into his or her own hands.
The Electoral Commission says it remains committed to delivering peaceful and credible polls in both constituencies. For WDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
For more electoral matters, we turn to Benin, where the National Autonomous Electoral Commission, SENA, is continuing its consultations with mayors across the country ahead of the 2026 general elections. The meetings focus on the issues of sponsorship, a crucial requirement for validating a presidential candidate. Mayors play a key role in sponsoring presidential candidates for the country's election. Sanko Lejanko completes the story.
After Parakou for the communes of northern Benin, it was the town of Bohikon in the Zoo department which hosted an exchange session between Sena and the mayors of the southern and central departments of the country. The objective was to strengthen the capacities of local elected officials on the legal requirements and practical modalities of electoral sponsorship. During the meeting, Senate representatives record the legal basis governing sponsorship before detailing the procedure for obtaining the official form. It was specified that the forms will be available from September 2 to 12, 2025, exclusively at the Senate headquarters, and that each elected official must appear there in person to take possession of them. The Senate also recorded that eligibility for the presidency and vice presidency of the Republic is conditional on obtaining at least 28 sponsorships from 15 separate electoral constituencies, a rule designed to ensure balanced representation and strengthen the legitimacy of candidates. At the end of the discussions, the advisor to Senate, Ibrahim Izzuddin, expressed satisfaction about the quality of the discussions and the attention paid by the mayors to the issues of the process. Local elected officials, for their part, welcomed an initiative that they consider relevant and enlightening in a context where rigor and transparency appear to be imperatives to guarantee a credible vote. This Bohicon meeting thus marks a decisive step in the preparation for the 2026 elections and reflects the Senate's desire to fully involve local elected officials in the consolidation of Beninese democracy.
You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. We're also live on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. Here is a reminder of our top stories. African leaders pitch investment at 9th Tokyo Conference for Continental Growth. Mali's Supreme Court indict former Prime Minister Senegal Maiga over alleged damage of public property. IMF begins week-long technical assessment in Senegal amid growing calls for a citizens-led audit of public debt. And Nigeria faces deepening humanitarian crisis as millions grapple with displacement, hunger, and rising poverty. Still ahead in the news, we have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Let me take you to Guinea, where the ongoing banking liquidity crisis continues to take a heavy toll on both citizens and the national economy. For several months now, withdrawing personal funds from banks has become increasingly difficult, with customers often receiving only 2 to 5 million Guinean francs when requesting 10 millions. In response to the deepening crisis, the Central Bank of the Republic of Guinea and the Professional Association of Banks held a meeting on Tuesday in Conakry. Acknowledging the severity of the situation, the Prime Minister Wadr announced the adoption of corrective measures. Here's an excerpt of the Prime Minister's statement.
Measures have been taken to instruct the tax authorities not to proceed with the businessmen and economic agents contributing to their reluctance to have their assets in the banking sector, to secure the assets of individuals and economic agents in banks in strict compliance with banking secrecy, which will have to be restored to avoid psychosis, which could lead to the loss of confidence.
That Guinean Prime Minister Wadr. And the central bank governor Karamo Kaba also announced that new banknotes will be printed and distributed to banks branches between August and October 2025.
They will accelerate deliveries very quickly. In September, we will have more than 1,500 billion coming. In October, we expect to have about 600 or 700 billion.
And that the central bank governor in Guinea, Karamo Kaba, announcing that new banknotes will be distributed or printed out between August and October 2025 to avert the ongoing challenges. While many citizens are hopeful that this new measure will help end the liquidity crisis and restore normal economic functioning in Guinea.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
For the newspaper review, let's join Sankole Janko for the latest headlines from the Gambia.
We begin today's press review with the Alkamba Times, and the lead story in the Alkamba Times reads the tragedy in Wellingaraba. 8-year-old Nyima Jao killed by another GTS boss, sparking community outrage. Young's Dabo standby promise withdraws from UDP flag bearers. Young Dabo is the chairman of Brikama Area Council, one of the prominent members of the opposition UDP, and many people thought he was going to vie for a position, but he has said that he is not going to vie for the presidential candidacy among the party. 5 convicted for dangerous car drifting traffic offense in Gambia. UDP condemns Pure's unlawful mobile data price hike in the Gambia. We move on to the Standard newspaper, and the lead story on the Standard newspaper reads: GSM operators ought to remove validity expiry on data credits. That's the lead story on the Standard newspaper. This one reads: lawyer J. Dabo denies being hired by UDP to defend PIU shooting suspect. I'm talking about UDP. UDP explains dual citizenship criteria in flag bearer application process. Well, Pura gets pushback over intervention on data pricing. This one reads: 7 youths remanded for common nuisance at Kololi. Abuko school car drifter jailed. Let's move on to the Fourier newspaper. And the lead story on the Fourier newspaper reads: Gamcell management breaks silence on privatization and staff unrest. This other one reads: Gambians on edge as US threatens new travel ban in August. That's another story on the Fourier newspaper. Accused persons stranded as Brikama court lacks magistrate. Let's take a look at the final newspaper for today, and that is the Point newspaper. And the lead story on the Point newspaper reads: US appoints new deputy chief of mission to Gambia. Witness says ex-president Jammeh gave 33 government vehicles to APRC. APRC is a former ruling Alliance for Patriotic and Reorientation construction founded by former president Yahya Jammeh. And finally, Tango urges judiciary to introduce clear sentencing on FGM. Tango is the Association of Non-Governmental Organizations in the Gambia, a renowned CSO, and it has urged the judiciary to introduce a clear sentencing on FGM. This comes amid reports that a 1-year-old infant died after female genital mutilation, FGM, in the Gambia. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies.
Thank you very much, Sankole Chanko, for the press review.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
And our guest interview this afternoon, we go back to our top story as African leaders are currently in Japan for the 9th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, pitching the continent's vast investment opportunities under the theme of sustainable development. Among the high-profile participants are Senegalese President Bassirou Diomaye Faye, President John Dramani Mahama of Ghana, President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria, and Liberia's President Joseph Boakai. In his remarks, Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama issued a strong call to Japanese investors, urging them to tap into the potential of the African continental free trade area after. He highlighted Ghana's 24 hours economy as transformative platform for business, trade and investment, while reaffirming Africa's role as the next global business hub, rich in both natural and human resources. To help us understand what the summit means for the African continent, let's join our guest this afternoon, Ghanaian economist Evans Nunu.
The first thing is that Ghana, just like most African countries, is struggling with its industrialization drive. Ghana is seeking to fully industrialize in order to diversify our export, to also export more finished products in order to get more revenue, foreign currencies in order to build our international reserves, and also to create more employment. So, I mean, given the technological base of Japan and the kind of investment they are known for, I think that Ghana stands a good chance of benefiting from them technology-wise. And then in terms of our industrialization, I'm sure that will be of great benefit to us. So it is a step in the right direction, especially given the fact that we need more foreign direct investment as a nation.
Right.
Remember, we are still before the IMF and our debt has been restructured. So If investors should come from Japan to set up directly in our economy, I think that would be a boost.
Right, indeed, that would be a boost. Overall, generally, how could increased Japan investment benefit Africa, especially infrastructure and trade?
I think that Japan coming into Africa, especially Ghana, we can create that enabling environment for their businesses to thrive. And so far, so good. Most of our expatriates, most of our direct investors from outside the country have never had regret visiting the free zone enclave, for example. And, apart from the free zone board or the free zone enclave, Africa, our problems are similar. If you compare Senegal to Ghana to Nigeria, our economy is still struggling to industrialize like the Western world. So obviously, if Japan should enter into Africa, as I have enumerated in the case of Ghana, the same would apply. I mean, we stand a good chance of diversifying our trade frontiers, because then we don't do much international trade with Japan. It has been US, UK, and the Emirates. But if we are able to look at some of these countries, it will help to reduce our dependence on these major currencies from the Europe and the US. Ghana suffers a lot when it comes to the dollar. So our exchange rate regarding the dollar has always been worsening because we do much of our businesses using the dollars. But except that, in my own view, I think that it's high time we started looking at a better economic integration as a nation, and a good way of using a common currency like the ECO that became topical some years back. I'm not too sure what is happening now, but I think that is a good way out.
Do repeated summits with global powers reflect a strategic diplomacy or lack of clear unified African economic agenda? We've seen Africa Summit in Russia, in China, now Japan. There is something going to be like Italy Africa Summit or sort. What do you make of this, sir?
The reality is that most of these summits are supposed to benefit Africa, because we are divided on our front, we don't stand a good chance of benefiting, because the reality is that until we unite through various platforms and summits and we seek to be strong together and forge ahead, we would always attend these summits. But the reality is that because these foreign counterparts are united, look, China, Russia, they sing the same song. America is a large area comprising of about 52 states, a very formidable force, European Union. So as Africans, if we don't also have a stronger front with a united power, it will be very difficult for us to do anything meaningful, because then we would segment our market. We'll be dividing our market into various pieces, and this Western world would always take advantage of our division. So, yes, these summits are supposed to benefit us, and they have inherent benefits in them. But I think that because we are heavily divided, we are not able to capitalize on that, and it reduces our bargaining power.
And that Ghanaian economist Evans Nunu. And in sports this afternoon, we begin with some basketball development as the dominant performance. Cape Verde outclassed reigning champions Tunisia, winning 87-54 at the Afro Basketball 2025 qualifiers in Angola. And Cape Verde also led by as many as 35 points, controlling the game from start to finish to improve their record 3-1. The Lows sees Tunisia title defense come to an early and unexpected end. And also Cameroon is back in the Afro Basket quarterfinals for the first time in 8 years after a hard-fought 77-68 win. And in football, Sudan and Senegal are through to the CHAN 2024 quarterfinals after a 10-0 draw at Zanzibar. And also crossing over to European football, Liverpool star Mo Salah has been named the PFA Player of the Year after a standout 2024-2025 season. He scored 29 goals, securing his fourth Golden Boot for himself. And that ends it for sports this afternoon. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Fali Luso and Umu Danyogo for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR English Service, as well as Facebook. And coming up At the bottom of the hour is WAD House Gender Program 50/50 with Nadede Tete. I am Christopher Aticho. Good afternoon and enjoy the rest of our broadcasts.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Imi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kaigama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.